no schedule of tariffs for our services sector under GATS, because GATT is the tariffs on trade, and GATS is the General Agreement on Tariffs for Services. We haven't even filed them yet to be objected to.
Could I just come in on that one? Because my understanding is that obviously goods and services are completely different things. You know, tangible items from intellectual things. I mean, I once heard it explained that in the customs union and single market, if you were a hairdresser in London and a rich banker in Frankfurt wanted you to come over and cut his hair or her hair, whatever, you could actually pack your bags up, get on the plane, cut his hair, come back to London, and you deal with the VAT in the UK, no problem. But if you're not in the single market, then you can no longer do that, because there is no free trade agreement for services. So you would have to go over to Frankfurt, set up a business in Frankfurt, pay German taxes, and carry on your business in Frankfurt and pay German taxes. You'd have to have your business there. You wouldn't be able to conduct your business and services from London. And moving on from that, which is a problem, of course, for financial services, which Margaret Thatcher started it all, and she turned our business in the UK from manufacturing into a service-led economy. And now, 80% of the UK GDP, I think I'm right, please stop me if I'm rabbiting on.
It's that sort of figure.
Is in services. And to trade in services, you have to, with the EU this is, you have to be in the single market. And if you're not in the single market, you cannot trade services from your own country. Anyway, and I don't think this, you won't get an add-on for services, I don't think, will you?
See, the single market's got 4 fundamental freedoms. The freedom of movement of goods, capital,
Absolutely.
workers, and services. And if you imagine a truck, right, it's driving from London to Madrid. Now, the truck driver is providing a service, he's a driver. You've got goods in the back of the truck, which he's moving across the border, friction-free, freedom of movement so he's a worker, he's providing a service. You've got freedom of movement of capital, because the guy in Madrid's buying the goods from the guy in the UK, so money's moving back. If you split up those 4 freedoms and say, well, I want it for freedom of movement of goods, services and capital, but not for people, how the heck's the truck going to move? So some magical autonomous remote control.
Yeah.
You know, if you take out the capital, freedom of movement of capital, who's going to be buying and selling the stuff?
Yeah.
You can't break up those 4 fundamental freedoms, and that's what Chequers did.
Sorry. Yeah.
So the services is absolutely core to that, and financial services, the government's proposal and the government's technical notices to solve the financial services sector and be able to sell these services into the EU is to say what we'll do is we'll open up the UK market for 3 years post-Brexit for any banking organisation inside the EEA, which is the EU plus EFTA, to have access to the UK market. But that's not reciprocated by the EU. So basically what she's done, the government have done, is proposed to UK banks, if you've got a headquarters in the UK, get it out of the country in the next 3 years, put it any country in the EEA, and you can still have access to the UK market and the other EU 27. But if you stay here, you only have access to the UK market. She's actively encouraging financial institutions.
What John was saying,
this is community what everybody gets to say.
The lady at the back who I've been rude to by shutting her down several times has got a question, please.
I was going to say, my partner, he's due to tour Germany next May.
Music, right?
Music, yeah. He's currently got no idea if their van will be allowed to drive in Europe, whether his driving licence will be valid in Europe, how their equipment will be treated when they get to Europe, whether they'll be allowed to earn money.
When's
In
he going?
Europe, he's going next May. They did ask him to do 29th of March, but they didn't dare.
A friend of mine is the bass player in Pink Floyd, the band. We were talking about this because they're on tour at the moment, and he said we've got a number of dates in EU countries. We just drive across for several trucks with all the gear and everything in it. He said we do one night in Switzerland. He said it's a bloody nightmare. 92 pages of documents listing all the goods in all the trucks. And he said, and there's such tight asses over there, they literally want to read every single line. He said, one time we went on tour to Switzerland, and they said, okay, find me this box, this amplifier. And literally, they had to go to the trucks, unload all the trucks, and lift that up. No, that's guitar. Oh, no, that's a speaker. Oh, no, that's a sound system. Oh, no, that's a light. And oh, no, this one's there's the amplifier. And they wanted to specifically check and make sure everything that was on the paper is in the back of the truck, and they're fully entitled to do that.
Jason,
if I was France, I'd do that to every single bloody truck coming out of the UK because we've just caused them so much trouble.
88
so,
Carne is what you
right now, I wouldn't take that booking if it was me. It's horrible.
Sorry, the gentleman in the front row, you've got a question.
Yeah, you see, we have a lot of these meetings, like, we'll all watch you, in the three blokes in the pub, we've all been on the marches, a number of us have been standing out in the streets. If you stand out in the streets of Spalding, look, this sounds horrible, people are afraid to say this, right? I've taught in Spalding, so have you, haven't you? Right? They don't care about Ireland, they don't care about exporting stuff, they don't really care about eating fruit and veg. Right. This is true. We will talk about this stuff for hours.
Now
you said to me earlier when I asked you this, medicine. We need to have things that when we stand in the street, like, everyone's afraid to say this. There's a lot of racists around here, and it is racism. Oh, they walk down the street speaking their lingo. And we've had this said to us in the streets in Spalding with people poking us and telling us that every Polish, Lithuanian, Latvian, Portuguese kid in Spalding has their own translator in the local schools. Right? And we say they don't, and they tell us they do. We need things to say to them. We can all talk to each other for hours about the things we understand and bother us and our WTO and all that. They don't care about any of that. But if we're going to persuade them that we should have a Remain vote, and then when we get one, we're going to persuade them to vote to Remain, we need to have things that scare the crap out of them.
May I take this one? Because I was, for those that don't know, I'm a Conservative. So please no hisses.
It's panto season.
He's a good Conservative.
And I was asked to speak with Andrew Adonis, Lord Adonis, on Wednesday in King's Lynn on the People's Vote meeting. And the one thing that came out from that, which really hammers home what you're saying, is that the Leave campaign in 2016 was all about getting to the heartstrings and tugging on them. And the Remain was Project Fear. So we sort of had a disjointed approach last time. Now, Alan was with us, and attending there, also on the platform speaking, was the chairman of the Lithuanian Society for King's Lynn. And along with him, he brought a member from, I believe, the Polish community and one from the Hungarian community. And Andrew Adonis had some good things to say about how, if we get this people's vote, and if people want me to, I'm quite happy to expand a little bit on how I think, as Conservatives, we will help achieve the people's vote in a moment. He said, we've got to approach things differently. And one thing that both he and I have in mind is we need to make people's champions out of the European community workers who have been working, some of them 19, 20 years or more, in the UK, and bring them back into the fold. Get this impression of them drunks on the streets with knives doing sort of, attacks on people every 5 minutes. We've got to change that. And the way to do that is to get people's champions from within those communities. And by working closely with people like this chairman, who we wanted to get an interview sorted out, which I think you've got the details of him, and also a couple of local farmers. And we need to look at doing a campaign leading up to the people's vote. Something, this is sort of top of the head thinking here, but you can imagine on the television a 30-second or a minute advert. I had cancer. I had to have an emergency operation. I'd like you to introduce you to my surgeon. And out walks a Lithuanian or a Pole. This is the nurse that looked at palliative care to my grandmother as she was dying. This is the guy that has picked the fields and was there at 6 o'clock every morning and produced the food that goes on your plate. That's the sort of programme we need to be doing next time. We need to be pulling the heartstrings. We need to be explaining to people that the European community is not about drunks, not about murderers.
But there is that bad side, though. You mustn't...
There is in every community.
You talk to a nurse from Pilgrim Hospital
who
tells you about the woman that's had her breast slashed by the foreign drug dealer in Boston, the guy that they tortured in Boston over 2 days. there is that, and you mustn't gloss over that side.
No, there's no glossing.
Because it is there.
But
it's there in every community.
I think it's in Northern Ireland as well, and London.
Absolutely. The guy that came to the last meeting was an ex-Northern Ireland minister, wasn't he? And he told us a little bit about Northern Ireland.
I scratched the surface today. I cried. On the 24th of June, when I saw the vote come in, I cried my eyes out. I cried like a baby, and I watched every single vote come in through.
And he said that fence is still there.
The second time I cried was in Northern Ireland, after that first day over there, and there's meeting the people and the conversations we had. It's just too scary.
Well, I worked for 10 years under Margaret Thatcher in the Ministry of Defence, working on both the Falklands and Northern Ireland. And I know it extremely well, and I know a lot of what you say is true. Lots of things happen, lots of bad things happen. The UDA were not saints in any of it, I can assure you. And we do not want to return to that. But likewise, we want to see this country retain its membership. And to do that, we can do so with a people's vote. John and I'm a local patron as well as a member of the Conservative Group for Europe. I work with Ken Clarke, I work with Edward Bickham, and I work with Don McGreevy, the former Attorney General. And we are working very hard at trying to make sure we have enough Conservatives. If it was going to be that it was just us going to be working with the Labour Party or whatever against the deal that Theresa May's put together, then we feel we've had enough. We've got around 15 MPs at the moment who will be voting against that deal. Bear in mind, 189 Conservative MPs voted Remain in 2016 out of 331 that were in office. So there is a lot of people fence sitting at the moment, and our job is trying to get them to come over to make sure that they come out in our favour. I'll be 2 seconds, Lou. I've got a bit between my teeth. As a chairman, I wasn't going to do this, but I feel I need just to give you a little bit of insight into what is going on elsewhere.
It's useful.
We are working very hard at converting as many as possible to make sure that happens. We are looking at new plans, as is Lord Adonis from a Labour perspective, on how we can change the way that we go about a people's vote if it comes about.
When it comes about.
When it comes about. We are very optimistic. I mean, we are at a point now where actually the ERG, which is the European Research Group, which is a very euphemistic name, of which John is a member of. Yes, as is Edward Lee, who is the MP up in the north of the county, in Grantham, as is Henry Billingham, who is the Western Norfolk King's Lynn guy whose territory was in the other day. And I happened to be interviewed by BBC Radio Norfolk, which was really good because lots of key questions. And it was just after Theresa May had finished sort of trying to slap around the cabinet to get them to back a vote. And I was asked, do I think that Theresa May has got the deal that she wants from her cabinet? And I just said, may I refer you to Chequers? I had been told that evening that there were potentially 4 MPs who will be resigning in the next 24 to 72 hours. And I said, remember Chequers. They all agreed at Chequers, and as soon as they got halfway down the drive, we saw it all going topsy-turvy. So I believe that we are at this crucial point now, where as a country, we need to look to push for a people's vote, because that is how we will get ourselves out of Europe. Theresa May has even said, and is on record now, the other day, I forget when it was, yesterday or the day before,
3 times.
There are 3 options. It's my deal, it's a no deal, or it's no Brexit. We want the 3rd option, no Brexit. And we will get it if we play our game right. So I've said as much as I want to say. I don't mean to jump in. I hope that's given you some insight into how...
And your name again is?
My name's Nick George, Dr. Nick George, and I work with the Conservative Group for Europe. I also have a local business here. I'm not going to advertise it because that will not be the idea. But I am very interested in making sure that the centrist view of the Conservative is heard. And I have been in, you may have seen some of the articles I've done in the paper about the people's votes, in Spalding Guardian, Spalding Today, Lincoln's Free Press, answering back to people like Craig Jackson, who is a notorious local, and indeed to John Hayes. And I assure you that one reason I am still a Conservative, as I said to Jason earlier, is that I can go to the AGMs and I can then, when John stands up and uses words like the treacherous EU, I can stand up and I can challenge him and I can say, John, that is not the sort of language we need. We need to get this country back together again. Our way to do that, a way to save the Conservative Party, is to put the onus back to the people. Then they can say the people have voted for no Brexit. The Conservative Party gets itself out of the mire. Theresa May gets herself out of the mire. And we get out of the mess, of total disgraceful mess that we're in at the moment.
So it's from ourselves.
There's just two things I wanted to follow up on.
Sorry,
Perfect. We're talking about sort of the stories of EU citizens in the UK. I don't know if you've come across the In Limbo project.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal project, it really is. And there's some absolutely brilliant stories in those books, and there's some great characters. I know a lot of the people in the books. And so we should definitely get some of those involved in the TV adverts.
And Article 50, by the way, it can be suspended. There are lawyers and judges who have said we can suspend, we can stop, we can extend, we can do what we like. And for what it's worth, our people over in Europe, there's good MEPs like Charles Tannock out there, and Lib Dem MPs as well, who come back and said that Europe is very, very sympathetic to us doing just that.
Absolutely. I mean, Europe likes the UK.
Yeah, they will be damaged as well by it.
The vital thing is the people who can make a decision about whether we get a people's vote or not are sitting in the House of Commons. And the people, a lot of the people, I won't say all of them because there are some good MPs, the thing that MPs care about the most is their own personal careers and covering their own backs and making sure that they're not liable for making a stupid decision and nobody can come after them for it. So write to your MPs is the message from the People's Vote campaign.
That's a lot.